Is Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's invitation to King Charles's coronation on the line? Hello everyone, welcome to Royal News Network. My name is Brittany, and today we're going to be talking about the report from the Daily Beast, which really seems to indicate that Charles is seriously considering not inviting them to his coronation. And if he does, that will be a huge blow to Harry and Meghan and their brand and their image. And it's something that Charles could definitely do because Harry and Meghan at this point are loose cannons. And one of his biggest concerns, according to the Daily Beast, is the possibility that Harry will attack Camilla in his forthcoming memoir and his reality TV show. And Charles, after spending over a decade trying to get Camilla accepted by the British people, would be utterly devastated by that and really wants to protect his wife. And so Harry and Meghan, if they want to go to this event, if they want to kind of continue to uplift their brand with that royal connection, they completely need an invitation to the coronation. However, I can also see why Charles is very, very hesitant and really doesn't seem to want to do it. And we'll be discussing some of these bigger implications and what's kind of really going on behind the scenes. But if you guys haven't been here to Royal News Network before, on this channel we provide compelling royal commentary. We also discuss television shows and movies and history as well. So if you guys want to subscribe, that would be fantastic. I also want to officially announce that I will be launching my fashion site. So that's Royal Fashion News on October 16th. So that is this Sunday. So I'm actually out here because I was filming something for it. I have actually Kate Middleton's Issa dress right here. So this is not obviously the Issa dress because it's magenta and hers was sapphire, but this is actually an Issa dress. And I feel like that's kind of special because the brand no longer exists and it's in the same wrap style that Kate wore. I actually almost got the sapphire version. I almost got it, but it was too much and I was a poor graduate student at the time, so I did not purchase it. This one was cheaper, but I still regret it. I still honestly think of that dress and kick myself in the keister for not actually purchasing it. Even though it would have, I think, kind of, I don't know, I'm pretty sure I did not have the money to do it, otherwise I would have done it. But anyways, guys, I'm super excited about that channel. I'll be showing off some fashion things, kind of tips and tricks, and also doing like top 10 lists, TR Tuesdays, Fashion Fridays, kind of reviewing all the fashion that we see from the royal ladies. And I will also be starting in these videos and in those two kind of linking the things I'm wearing because I know sometimes you guys ask about those, and I'll be kind of doing, you know, kind of royal lookalike looks or trying to find links to various royal fashion items. So if you are encouraged and want to dress like the royals, I will be helping you do that, because what I love about royal fashion, and this will be kind of the end of my spiel, is that it's timeless, it's elegant, it's modest, and it's very, very professional. So you can go to pretty much any professional work site kind of mimicking a royal and their fashion look to a certain extent, and you can get through there and it's just a great thing. I mean, that's not all the cases because there's some peripheral members and they wear things and I'm like, what were you thinking? But for most of the main royals, they really do exemplify this very professional look and a look that really works in the workplace. So I will be guys, and it just looks great in general. I love royal fashion. So if you guys want to subscribe to that, I'll put the link down there below as well. And I'm looking to finalize, and I'm hoping to finalize some details soon of the trip I plan with you guys to London. So I'll be giving you guys the details on that when I have it. They're still processing it. But like I said, this Daily Beast article, it came out and the footprint of it has kind of grown. And I found it to be super interesting and very, very telling. Charles is in a really, really tough spot here because he needs to have a coronation. He should have both of his sons there. But he was the most popular guy before he became king. His popularity is growing. But at the same time, he's had this relationship with Camilla. There's been a lot of backwards and forwards on this. We have The Crown coming out there next season. And so there's a lot of things kind of correlating around this. And Charles really has to think, what are Harry and Meghan going to do? Because there's a couple things we have brewing with Harry and Meghan, and we don't know how those are going to look. So that's the reality TV show with Netflix and Harry's memoir. And it's been said before that his memoir is very much going to attack Camilla for the demise of his parents' marriage. Now, I won't go into the details and the tit for tat on that, But I will say that I think there were two people who broke up the marriage. That was Charles and Diana. Obviously, both of them cheated. Both of them, I don't think their foundation was set for the best relationship to begin with. I think it was probably always going to fail. Their age difference was huge. They had very different wants in life. His hand was forced. I mean, there was a lot of things that went into that. So, because you got to think, back in the olden times, royal relationships were not done out of love. They were alliances. So when you married somebody, you didn't marry them because you wanted to. I mean, they married technically children. They didn't actually have any intercourse or anything like that. But children were married and promised to each other from toddlerhood in some cases. And that was to establish these strong ties between these various monarchies, because it was basically an ambassadorial move. It was a move that tied families together. Alliances were cemented through marriage. So it was a very much important thing. And some of that mindset was still there when Charles got married to Diana. Yes, it's a very old mindset. Yes, it doesn't make any sense. But that's what was there. And so that very much, I think, drove the push to Charles. It's like, you need to marry somebody. She needs to fit these certain criteria. We don't care who it is, just do it. And he did it, and obviously I think Diana was much more in love with him than he was with her. They had some good times, but most of it was bad. And it was just a compounding situation, and one that Harry really was too young to understand. He was 12 when Diana passed away. He was 13 a couple weeks later. William was very much front and center as he watched his parents' marriage dissolve. He was there shoving tissues to Diana under a door. He was very much, he was her confidant. So I feel like William, throughout this whole situation, knew a lot more about their marriage and how it dissolved. And he, I don't think, was really all that keen on Camilla. But after time, William supposedly went on this fact-finding mission, according to Tom Bower. He came to the conclusion, I think, that both his father and his mother made bad decisions. They both were not the best to each other at times. However, I think he came out of it stronger because he understood Diana's faults and his father's. And it was clear William chose kind of the antithesis of who Charles chose. William dated Catherine for almost 10 years. That's a really, really long time. And she was subjected to a lot of abuse and harassment. But William did that in part not only to make sure that Catherine understood the role, but to make sure he really loved her, that she really loved him, that she was willing to go through all these hoops to be with him. Because as a royal, to a certain extent, people love you because of that title. So William had to make sure throughout that whole dating process that Catherine was really in it for him. She really did love him. She really wanted this role, and that she would be the best one for the job. And I think she's turned out to be perfect for the part that she has to play. And Camilla had a really tough time in the British media, but ever since she married in, she has been nothing. She's kept her head down. She hasn't complained. She has done her role to perfection, I think. And I feel like the British people, and I think the public as a large, is really coming to accept Camilla and who she is. And I think she seems like a lovely person. She seems like a fun person. She even had the woman who played her in The Crown come to this event, and they seem to have a great laugh. So I feel like Camilla has really had a tough time, but she's come through the whole thing a bit stronger. And Charles is madly in love with Camilla. He's been in love with her for years. He's still madly in love with her. They are very, very close. Charles is not going to take this lying down. He is, I think, very much wanting to protect his wife, not only protect her, but protect the institution of the monarchy. Because at this point, Camilla is queen. And because she is queen, her and Charles both represent the throne, and they represent the monarchy. And Charles wants to be king, and he wants to continue being king. But if Harry undermines Camilla and therefore undermines her claim and Charles's claim by extension to the throne, Charles has a huge problem. And that's a problem he does not want. And Harry, I don't think, fully understands that. And Harry, again, all he can think about, all he is consumed about, along with Meghan, are themselves. It's all about their struggles, their heartache, their challenges. It's not about, well, you know, maybe other people were hurting too. It's not all about you, but for Harry and Meghan, it's all about them. So Charles and William have to kind of manage that. And Charles doesn't really want Harry there, especially if he undermines a woman who's going to be crowned right next to him. And I think Charles is completely right in that scenario. He needs to protect the crown. He needs to protect William. He needs to protect Catherine, and he needs to protect Camilla. And the best way to do that, perhaps, is to basically say to Harry, I'm sorry, but no, you cannot come. So here is what the Daily Beast said about it. Almost everything Charles has done over the past 20 years has, in one way or another, been about getting Camilla accepted by the public. A friend said, he loves her. He is incredibly protective of her, and he couldn't do it without her. Even the Queen finally accepted that. It is one thing for Harry to attack Charles. He can take it on the chin. But if Harry forces him to choose by laying into Camilla in his book, I have no doubt he will choose Camilla. And obviously we don't know if this will be the case or not, but I think it's incredibly important to point out that, you know what? Harry is doing the same thing with Meghan. He's, you know, quote unquote protecting Meghan by taking them away from the royal family. He would do anything to protect his wife. I don't know if some of those things are things he really needs to, or she needs to really be protected from them, but that's an entirely different story. I think some of their claims of security breaches and security concerns are exaggerated. However, wouldn't Harry agree? Wouldn't Harry agree that he doesn't want somebody else attacking his wife? And you know what? That's what his family has done. They have maintained a dignified silence about Meghan. Sure, her staff are talking and other people are talking, but the palace really hasn't said anything. They even kept the bullying allegations under wrap. It also protects them by osmosis, because the palace, I think, didn't handle Meghan well, or the allegations of bullying against her. They did not protect the staff. And so I think the palace does have a lot to answer for in that situation. However, they also did protect Meghan by not actually making it public. They did protect her. They also protected the staff. I think in the whole scheme of things, protecting Meghan was the least important. It was more important to protect the palace and the staff members and their identities, rather than kind of dredging everything up in front of Meghan. But at the same time, it's like, shouldn't Harry understand that his father just wants to protect his wife, that he's invested in their relationship as a couple? Shouldn't Harry think that's a good thing? But no, Harry apparently is considering attacking Camilla, and we've heard this a lot before. Actually, one of my very, very first videos, it's not very good by the way, is actually going over this very issue, is that Harry apparently did want to attack Camilla. And again, that's just not a great look. Goes on to say, this is from Katie Nichol, there's no doubt that Charles would like Harry and Meghan to be at his coronation. And to be fair to Charles, he has been magnanimous in terms of extending very publicly olive branches to the Sussexes, not only in his televised accession address, but also putting them front and center at funeral events. Charles really did do this. He's handled them pretty well, considering all Harry and Meghan have done. Harry and Meghan have been nothing but headaches in everybody's lives. They are headache inducing. Just listening to them talk, you just hang your head and go, oh, you guys are so annoying. But the palace really has tried to handle them very, very well. And we've seen this. And I think it's incredibly important for the palace to have done this. And Harry and Meghan, every time they spit in the palace's face, it makes them look petty, not the palace. So again, I understand this, and they want to extend the olive branches. We got the report this week that there's still a picture of the Sussexes wedding in Charles's office. I mean, of course there would be. I think it is still obviously an olive branch as well. Wouldn't it be great though if he had like recent pictures of Harry and Meghan and the kids? He probably really doesn't, sadly. But Harry and Meghan, again, have to tread very, very carefully here. And I just don't know if they can thread this line. She goes on to say, but he does expect respect in return. And a problem is going to arise if, between now and then, Harry repays them by attacking him, so this is Charles, Camilla, or the institution. He's not going to put up with their inaccurate and unfair attacks. And I think that's incredibly true. Harry and Meghan's attacks are inaccurate, unfair, and they're basically Harry and Meghan trying to formulate this narrative, which is basically essentially based on lies or half-truths, those sorts of things. We've even seen this in reports about Netflix, and I think I may do a longer video on this. If you want to see it, let me know, although it'll be kind of out of the news cycle, that basically Netflix is kind of scratching their heads going, okay, you're saying one thing in the reality TV show and another thing in your memoir. So which is it? So I feel like Netflix is even coming to the conclusion that Harry and Meghan have lied about things. They were lying about something, because if you are doing a reality TV show on your lives and you're doing a memoir, those things should mostly line up. If they don't, you have a problem. You have a problem. And obviously, people who experience different things say different things about the experience, but Harry and Meghan are one people. I was actually thinking about a recent podcast that came out called Girls Next Level, I think it is. So I used to watch the show in the early 2000s, The Girls Next Door, based around kind of the Playboy Mansion. And Holly Madison, one of the girls, she has a different version of events than Kendra, another girl in the house. They're two different people. I can understand them having two different versions of events. Obviously, either one is true or both are true in certain aspects of it. But Harry and Meghan, they're one person. They should not be like Harry is one person. He should not be contradicting himself. Meghan is one person. They should not be contradicting themselves. But we've even seen this in the Oprah Winfrey interview. They contradict their own narrative about the racist allegations that they made. They contradicted themselves in it. So what's true and what's false? That's a really hard thing. And I think Harry and Meghan's credibility is really starting to take a hit as more and more of these type of stories come out. She also says the Queen was ruthless when it came to protecting the institution, and Charles will be too. And we are possibly seeing that in the lack of urgency around naming Archie and Littlebet Prince and Princess. My understanding is that Charles is not averse to granting them titles, but he expects to see respect from the Sussexes in return. The ball is in the Sussexes' court. The royals, just like the rest of us, are waiting to see what they will do next. And that's a huge thing. What will Harry and Meghan do? And we see this throughout the rest of the article, and I'll just, again, bring out bits and pieces I find interesting. And you can obviously, I'll link the whole article down below if you want to read it. But I think it's incredibly important to consider that Harry and Meghan, everything rests on them. Their actions are why their kids don't have titles. Their actions are why their invitation might be in doubt. Their actions are why they were not treated the same way at the funeral as they would have been if they were still in the royal fold. Their actions are having an actual impact, and I feel like Harry and Meghan don't totally understand that actions have consequences. I feel like we're expecting to say whatever they said in the Oprah Winfrey interview, having the palace not care or grovel an apology, and then be able to do whatever they want. But that's not how the real world works. And the palace is like, we're not apologizing because we don't think we have anything to apologize for. And I don't really think they did. So this will be, again, interesting to see how Harry and Meghan manage this, because whether or not they go, whether or not they see this historic event is all on them. The article also states the question of what the Sussexes intend to do, how deep they will dish, how painful and damaging will be the secrets they reveal in their next salvos, is the great known of unknowns, preventing any true reconciliation or sense of arriving at a new stable accommodation, however uneasy between the two sides. So again, this idea of known and unknowns I think is really interesting, because again, they kind of know generally what Harry and Meghan could say, but they don't know what it is, because I think so much of it is based on half-truths, lies, misdirection, that the palace just doesn't know what they'll do and how they'll react to things, because they're, I mean, I don't know if I can say it this way or not, but sort of unstable. They're very much these entities where nobody knows what they're going to do, and they all know none of it's going to be good. And they know that they have a specific axe to grind, so they'll make up anything in order to try to get their way. And I think that's what the palace is worried about, is that Harry and Meghan, I feel like, especially we saw this in the Cut interview and other things, I feel like they keep upping the ante because they've said kind of all the worst things already, and they have to continue driving this narrative because they have no independence. They have no ability to drive their own income except for damaging the royal family. So they have to keep making things up, upping the ante. So they're in this kind of weird stalemate now. So the palace, again, is in a really, really tough spot here, because, and this goes back to what Valentine Loha says, what do you do when the other side is not civil? What do you do when the other side is willing to do anything to destroy you? And that's what Harry and Meghan are willing to do. They're willing to say anything. They're willing to do anything. And that leaves the palace in a really bad spot, because I feel like most of the people involved in the monarchy and the palace are decent people. So they don't really feel like they need to lie. They don't really feel like they need to get into this mudslinging. Harry and especially Meghan, is desperate to drag them into, because Harry and Meghan, and I feel like especially again Meghan, needs to feel superior over the royals because they did not accept her as Queen Meghan. While the Queen was alive, the ambiguity, while not helpful, was something both sides could just about live with. In one version of events, Harry and Meghan intended to publish the book and stream their films this year, and then spend the next year rebuilding burned bridges. The death of Queen Elizabeth blew the feasibility of such a strategy completely out of the water. This plan to release the reality TV show, release the memoir, and then after you've burned the bridges, go back and try to rebuild them. I can't think of anything more idiotic than that, to be quite honest. Why would you think that's a good idea? This is a terrible idea. It's a terrible, terrible idea. But Harry and Meghan are always filled with terrible ideas. Meghan is really, truly quite bad at being royal. And what I mean by that is that the royal fold, basically, it's not entirely how things run anymore, but it's essentially very much like it was in the Middle Ages to a certain extent. It's a court system. There are roles, there are hierarchies. If you play within the sphere, you have to kiss everybody's behind who's ahead of you and kind of manage these relationships in a way that makes you look good, your kids look good, secure lines of succession, those sorts of things. Harry and Meghan just are like scorched earth policy, and then everybody will just forgive us and we'll all go la-di-da and like skip toodaloo down the road. Like, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. So this idea that they would scorch earth and then go back and try to rebuild is like, why would you do that? That's a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad idea. That's what it is. A terrible, horrible, no good, very bad idea. Awful. Don't know what they were thinking. I just can't imagine talking about anything. Just can't imagine doing that. I feel like that's just, again, such a dumb way to go about things. And that's one thing, again, it's blown back in their face already. It's blown up in their face because that always was going to blow up in their face, because that was never a good idea. And we've already seen the impacts of that in that they don't have those titles for their kids yet. If they wanted them, if they had shut up once they left, if they had tried to actually do things on their own instead of mimicking the royals, they might have those titles. They might be in a better place, but no. We need to try to kind of be royal, and we need to burn bridges, and then we'll rebuild them and everybody will forgive us and it'll be kumbaya. Yeah. And when the Queen died, I mean, that was already torpedoed pretty much. I feel like especially on William's side, I don't think William would have dealt with any of that. But once the Queen died and Charles became king, and all of a sudden his future is on the line because of your actions, what you've said, yeah, nobody is going to do that with you anymore. Nobody's going to play those games, because there's actually real stakes now. I think, again, they could reconcile with the Queen, maybe some of the royals, but again, there are real, true stakes now. And Harry and Meghan, don't mess with the king. Don't mess with the king, don't mess with the crown, because you will always get burned. But the Windsor obstinacy is a powerful thing, and there has been no sign that Harry and Meghan even attempted to reconcile in any meaningful way while they were in the UK for the Queen's funerary rites. Yes, we very much saw this. Harry was very much separated from the royals. Meghan was kind of separated from the royals too. Part of it, though, is that because of the whole Netflix thing, nobody wants to talk with them because they don't know if what they say, especially in a moment of vulnerability after their grandmother died, if it'll be used on Netflix. If Harry and Meghan will reference it in their Netflix reality TV show. That's what happens when you kind of sell your souls. Netflix wants its pound of flesh. And so Harry and Meghan have to pay up in one way or another. And I guarantee you, they'll throw anybody under the bus. They'll say anything about anybody else to get their way. So Duncan Larcombe, the royal author and former royal editor of The Sun, told the Daily Beast, what Harry and Meghan say and do in the next few months really matters. Their actions over the next few weeks could decide not just what relations with the royals will be like for the coronation in May, but what they will be like for the rest of their lives. Everything depends on what he in particular says in his book, which is by some margin the most eagerly awaited royal book of all time and the first to be written by a family member. If the palace do decide not to invite Harry, one way around it is for them to say the coronation is an institutional event, not a family event, and so it is for working royals only. While it will be an extraordinary snub for Harry if he is not invited to support his father on the biggest day of his life, it is equally hard to see how the king can invite him. At the backdrop to the coronation is Harry sticking machetes in the backs of Charles and Camilla while promoting his book. And again, I think there's something exceptionally true here and exceptionally good to point out, which is that Harry and Meghan's future, their ability to make money is very much on the line because Harry and Meghan have made the stupid decision not to actually separate themselves from the royals. They're mimicking royalty. They're trying to create their own royal court in the US. And you know what that happens when you do that? Is that you are all of a sudden tied, your future is tied to the institution that you hate. Try to actually be producers of various movies and things. If they tried to get actual creative projects off the ground, maybe if Meghan went back to acting, she's still terrible at it, but maybe she gave it another shot, it might be okay. Without those things, Harry and Meghan are sunk. They are utterly and completely sunk. They need this. They've made the very serious error of thinking that they can do and say whatever they want and it won't come back to bite them in the butt. Because they've made their entire brand off attacking the royal family, that if they continue to do that, that their revenue is essentially tied to the monarchy. It is tied to the monarchy. And if they can't accept that, if they don't adjust their behavior and what they're saying, again, their pocketbooks are completely on the line. And that's a mistake of Harry and Meghan of not separating themselves enough from the royal fold. They need to go. They have to go to reestablish their royal brand because, again, their brand is all about being royal. It's not actually about having any talent or doing anything. It's about being royal. But royalty doesn't work in the States. That's not how it works. Charles appears to be keeping his powder dry until he sees what they come out with, Larcombe added. He's not yet made Harry and Meghan's children prince and princess, though they are entitled to those titles as a matter of law and precedent. That's a carrot that could be left out there for years to come. Charles is certainly not rushing to make the declaration one way or another. And he may be taking some comfort from reports that Harry is desperately trying to rewrite parts of the book that are most critical to his father. But I think, again, Charles has to be careful here because, yes, Harry may take it out now, but he may add it in later once he gets maybe the titles for his children he so desperately wants. I think at this point, the palace needs to say, you're not working members of the royal family. You aren't engaged in this. We're not going to play this game. Your children were not grandchildren of the sovereign when they were born. And so they just aren't entitled to those. And I think that's the easiest way to go because, again, I think even if they leave that carrot out there in perpetuity, Harry and Meghan will continue to kind of harp on things. They'll continue to push the limit because even when the Queen was in power, they still continued to push the limit all the time. And they had no respect for the institution. And Charles has some self-respect. He really needs to cut them loose and make those ties kind of cut them off permanently to an extent. I mean, I think they need to leave a door open for Harry to come back because I think at some point Harry and Meghan will divorce. But Charles also has to think about the future of the monarchy and the legacy he's leaving for William, George, and future heirs. Sure, they need the money, but Harry must be asking himself how sustainable it is to go up against a man who is now one of the most powerful in the world, a monarch who has every lever of the past machinery of the British state to pull at his whim. As the coronation will make abundantly clear, they are no longer in an agreement with the meddling princeling. They are in an agreement with a king, and that is a very different proposition. So that, I think, is the rub. Harry and Meghan need the money. They need the money. So they have to trade off their royalty, their royal connections to do that. And the palace needs to take the oxygen out of them when it comes to that. And that includes, to a certain extent, probably severing a lot of the ties. Obviously, when the Queen died, that was a huge event. But I think the author is right, or I think Larcombe is right in that they could make it so the coronation is only for working members of the royal family. I think that is kind of sad, but again, Charles has to think of the future. And Harry and Meghan are just meddling and they're just a distraction. They need to be dealt with in the most efficient way possible. And I think the way to do that is to kind of cut them off, is to say, you know what, your children aren't getting titles. I'm sorry, but you're not working royal, so you're not going to the coronation. You can come to dinner and parties around that, but you're not going to the coronation itself. And that'll be a huge blow, again, to Harry and Meghan's brand. But like I've said before, Harry and Meghan, you only have yourselves to blame. All you needed to do when you left the royal family is actually create something. Actually be business people, be entrepreneurs, be creatives. You could not do that. You could not do that. You've tied everything to the crown. And when you have no power there, guess what happens? It kind of blows up in your face. And that's what Harry and Meghan, I think, are experiencing right now, is that all their actions are culminating in this kind of void that they didn't anticipate, because again, they can't think 20 steps ahead. Being a part of a royal court, being a part of a monarchy, especially if you're not the direct heir, I don't care if it's the 1100s or it's 2022, you need to think of all scenarios. This is a master chess game, especially if you're going against the crown like Harry and Meghan are. If you're willing to just kind of follow the creed and follow the party line, you would have been fine. But if you're trying to play games with the monarchy, I'm sorry, but the crown always wins. It always wins. And at this point, Harry and Meghan, they're not going to actually physically stab anybody in the back. I mean, if they did, they'd be arrested and thrown in jail. So I don't think they'll do that. But they can throw, you know, metaphysical daggers in people's back. And the palace has to... And the palace and Charles and William had to protect the institution. And so they need to protect it from Harry, because its biggest liability right now is Prince Harry. So guys, let me know what you think of this video. Let me know if you think of Charles considering not allowing Harry to attend the coronation. I think that's very interesting, and it remains to be seen how that'll work. But guys, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to check out Royal Fashion News, debuting on October 16th. I was going to do it on a Saturday, but I think I need the time on Saturday, so it'll debut on Sunday morning. They'll debut on Sunday morning. Although sometimes they say the afternoon is better, but we'll have it debut on Sunday morning. If you go to church that morning, please go to church and then watch it later. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye.